A very good evening, a warm welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick and Pay, and welcome to an evening of celebration. We have so much to raise two very nice glasses of wine, and I suspect they might become four by the end of the show, in honor of two different brands who've got a lot to celebrate. One's bought out a brand new wine, and the other's won, I think, 26 awards this week, and it's only Thursday. They're just on an extraordinary run. KWV's The Mentors with a new malbec, and then Vilafonte just having a golden week. And they're not just great for them, but great for South African wine as well. So we're going to meet some very special guests in just a second. Before we do that, a big thank you to everybody who joined us last night online for our special live broadcast from Element House and the launch of the new vintage as made by Erica Obermeyer, and adding her wonderful touch to what is another superb red blend that is available from Element. We had a great dinner afterwards. It was a lovely evening. So thank you to everybody who took part. Thanks to everybody too who's been sending feedback and has been watching our brand new series on entrepreneurship. Myself and Maps Mapanyane partnering up with Boschendals the Nicholl to deliver an 8-part series on inspiring entrepreneurial stories. And we kicked off with Catherine Constantinides and her story of social entrepreneurship on Tuesday. A little later on tonight, 8 o'clock, episode 2 goes live digitally. The story of Jason Goliath, the business of comedy, and how a failed insurance agent became one of the funniest men in South Africa. So look out for that. We've also got plenty coming up over the next week or so, but I'll give you some more detail on that a little later. Right now, let us say hello to a great collection of guests. Two of them are very much regulars on the show. We see plenty of Izele from The Mentors, plenty of Mike from Vilafonte. We don't sadly see quite so much, but I'm hoping to change that, of Zelma and Phil, the other parts of this empire that is Vilafonte. To all four of you, a warm welcome to the show. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
You.
Thanks, Dan.
Well, let's start with some congratulations and our regular Mr. Ratcliffe. If you can keep it to under 5 minutes and just let us know what you've won in the last little while and just what an extraordinary time it's been for Vilafonte.
Well, hi, Dan, and hi to everybody out there. Yeah, it's pretty humbling, I must say. We like to participate in wine competitions where wines are judged blind. We also like international competitions where the big guns enter. And yeah, recently we were very pleased to have been awarded the trophy for Outstanding Red Wine Producer of the World by the International Wine and Spirit Competition. And then, much to our surprise and certainly much to our excitement, a little bit later, we were awarded as the Outstanding Producer of the World for 2021. So, yeah, it's pretty exciting for us, and yeah, it's really great for South African wine to be playing at this level.
Best in the world does sound quite extraordinary, but give us a little bit more context. What exactly is this award? How much does it really mean that you've won this ahead of producers from all over the winemaking planet?
Well, I like to take things with a little bit of a pinch of salt. If I look at some of the other wines that were entered in the competition, they are wines of extraordinary quality. And for any panel of judges to select one of them to be better than the other is definitely subjective. I think on any given day, any great producer could have lifted the trophy. As I say, certainly many of the top wines from South Africa enter. Great wines from all over the world literally are entering. It is the biggest wine competition in the world. And one more interesting thing is, other than judging blind, all of the judges are involved in the trade. So they're either master sommelier, master of wine, or WSET level 4 or higher. So it is quite a professional place for us to enter, and it just makes it a little bit sweeter when we're judged by our peers.
And it adds another chapter to what's not really a very long story. Vilafonte, in world wine terms, is still a very young entity, and it's one that features three of you, as well as a whole team behind you, of course, but three principal actors on this particular stage. Before I welcome them in, Mike, just give us the introduction to Zelma and to Phil, because I know that they'll be very modest and bashful and won't tell us nearly how cool and successful they actually are. So I'll allow you to do that on their behalf, if you will.
Well, what a pleasure. I like to think of Zelma and Phil as the brains trust. Without the two of them, Vilafonte simply wouldn't exist. Phil planted the original vineyards. Zelma made the original wines and is deeply involved to this day. But I think more importantly, I like to introduce them as my friends. We are into our third decade as partners, as good partners. We've been on an incredible ride together. Zelma is an international winemaker of incredible renown with a long list of achievements to her name. Phil is a scientist wine grower, a man of intellect, and somebody who's also had his fingers in the dirt in vineyards right across the span of the world with a deep amount of experience. And so it's just wonderful to work with this kind of level of partners. It's certainly been a learning curve and continues to be a learning curve for me, and it's a very proud moment for the three of us.
Well, let's go over to those two partners. Zelma Phil, two incredibly distinguished wine-making careers, wine-producing careers. There's not much that the two of you haven't done. How important, how meaningful is this particular wine and the latest evolution of this Vilafonte story for you?
Well, I would think for us, Dan, it's one of the most exciting parts of the wine business that we've experienced in our professional lives. Our professional lives run 40 to 50 years. But in the case of Vilafonte, we fell in love with South Africa for its soils and climate for great winemaking. And we really wanted to come and make a wine or wines that were competitive with the best wines in the world. And at the time we first came to South Africa in 1990, there were many good wines, but few great wines. And we particularly loved the Cabernet varietals, the Bordeaux varietals there. And so we took this vision, we partnered with Mike to have a very tight focus, produce two wines from a vineyard that we planted and Phil and his team managed, and make something that was really spectacular. Now, that was 25 years ago when we bought the land and started planting. And we've been in the wine business long enough to know that it's very competitive business. It's also, you're at the mercy of Mother Nature. And so we feel deeply satisfied that we have been awarded this best producer in the world. In fact, it was really unimaginable that would happen, but it's deeply satisfying.
And it's an award that says so much about what you've done collectively with this Vilafonte brand, and it's risen to an extraordinary level, not just in South Africa, but as we see right around the world. Phil, you've worked in the wine industry for so long. You would have gone into this particular project clearly with a certain degree of belief in what Vilafonte might be able to deliver. To what stage has it over-delivered? Has it surpassed your expectations for where this project might end up?
Well, that's a good question, Dan. I'm a farmer, and you get up in the morning and you just say, okay, these are the things I have to do to achieve the objectives that we want to work on. And I call it a sort of an absolute mission. There are, over the course of my career, our careers, we've pretty much tried and seen a lot of different things. And the idea that we had was to form a very clear vision of the wines that we wanted to produce. And then we found this spot, and we thought the attributes, the characteristics of the spot would would really give us an opportunity to implement those ideas, tools, techniques, and so forth. And so what we do is you take a site and you take a mission and you reach in the toolbox of all these things you've learned and the stuff stored away in the back of the brain. And you say, okay, today we need to do this, tomorrow we need to do this, and we just keep going. And, I have to tell you, it's just such a thrill to when we have an absolute vision of what we wanted to do, that at this point in time, we're getting this recognition for it, because we didn't go for recognition. We went for the pure expression of the best we could do from a site. And to have them come together at this point is really a wonderful sort of add-on kind of gift.
What do you think then, by extension, Phil, this says about a country you know well in South Africa? You've worked with a number of vineyards as well as the Vilafonte project. What does it say about where South African wine is at a global level, how we're competing, how people are seeing us on the international stage?
Well, I don't know the complete breadth of the number of awards that were in this recent competition. I don't know the breadth of the number of South African wines and the accolades that they got, but I know it's dramatic, and I know it's a large number. And that's certainly, I think, also the fact that this is a competition that's centered in the UK, and that is certainly for South Africa, many exporting countries. It's a target market. And I think what we can do, having penetration of South African wines into the market is one thing, but being able to elevate them at the level in the market, the elevation of the appreciation of the, not only, oftentimes people talk about value for money. Well, I think one needs to look at it absolutely and saying, are these the wines you want to drink? And if they are, you need to reward the producers who go through a lot of toil, effort, struggle. And South Africa has, like every other country, I think it may be a time when it's coming into the limelight. What we need to do now, I think, as a country and as producers in the country, is keep it in the limelight, not just have it be a sort of a flash and then bang, it's gone. And I think having all these wines and having the South African wines, having them in the UK market is fabulous. So people can really go out and say, hey, I want to try these wines, and they can get access to them.
Comments coming in, and Post Sugar, I'm here for the Series C. Ooh, Mike, share with me, please. Umpo will be drinking that very shortly. And Johan van Eck, outstanding achievement, Vilafonte. Well done, Mike Radcliffe and Zelma and Hermanus Philippus Spies. I think that's the Afrikaans version of Phil Fries coming there too. Thank you. Zelma, we know that Phil is the farmer, and we know he's an absolute expert in that field and done so much, so many big name brands, people like Opus One and Robert Mondavi, you've of course worked with, and Cake Bread and many, many others. We know that Mike sits on his couch at home on Twitter and Instagram, because that's what he does. And then there's your role, which is the winemaking. How do you fulfill that role, sitting on the other side of the world, and continue to have an influence on what comes through? And what is it about Vilafonte as a winemaker that has excited you in the context of everything else you've done in this remarkable winemaking career of yours?
Well, the thing that's most exciting for me in making wine is learning about the site. When we planted our vineyards, we plant in 1 hectare blocks, and with four Bordeaux varieties. And each of those blocks over time becomes a personality for us. It has a certain flavor. It may be recalcitrant some years. It may be extraordinary some years. But the opportunity to work with one site over many, many years gives you this connection with the impact of the land and the climate on the personality of the wine, because each of our different blocks is made into a wine of its own. So after fermentation, we can taste them. And it's so extraordinary that each little 1 hectare parcel keeps its own personality when it's right next to another parcel of the same variety that has a little different expression. And that goes into things you can't completely see: the soil, the aspect toward the sun, and other sensitive climate, but minute sensitive climate differences. And to your question about how can you, quote, make wine around the world, you have to have really wonderful help. And from the beginning, I've hired and worked with a South African winemaker who, together with me, have made harvest decisions and overseen the fermentations. In those two processes, the harvest decisions and the fermentation management lie 90% of what you have in the class. They're both very, the ripening and the wine growing of the grapes, which is what Phil does, give significant flavor and aroma and texture and structure differences from hectare to hectare. And in the winery, you have to respond appropriately to those differences to support them and to develop them. And that's it. It's experience, and it's tasting, and it's tracking the information about the fermentation and about the vineyard. It has a lot of little details. So we committed ourselves to be in South Africa for every harvest. We, one or the other of us was there over a 2-month period. And then we came again in the winter to look at what had been accomplished and planned for the spring. And then we came in together in the spring, where I did the blending with the winemaker who was working with me, and of that past vintage, and began to prepare the one before that for bottling. So we kept a close hand and touch on the winemaking and wine growing for at least the first 10 years. And I've had the pleasure to work with several young South African winemakers who have been bright, made great contributions, gone on to their own projects, and, become an integral part of the history of the Vilafonte project.
And by extension, the two of you have become both honorary South Africans and part of our own South African wine history. And in your case, Zelma, added a fantastic woman in wine to the annals of our production story, which leads rather nicely to our other guest who's been waiting patiently, but I've got no doubt enjoying the conversation because she's a complete wine anorak. She's also the mad scientist, our favorite one on the show. Izele, a very warm welcome back to Dan Really Likes Wine. How exciting is it for you as a South African winemaker to see the rise of a brand like Vilafonte and to see it getting recognition around the world, casting a spotlight not just on Vilafonte, but on South African wine as a whole?
Hi, Dan. It's always lovely to be with you. Well, it's fantastic. I just want to congratulate the Vilafonte team. And yeah, it's so good for brand South Africa, but still, it's very good for them as well. And it's paving the way for younger generation winemakers, and it's an honor to be in the room today with them as a team, and hopefully one day we will also achieve something extraordinary like they've achieved just now. So just a big congratulations, and it's really good for the South African brand.
Almost exactly the response I was expecting from you, because A, I know you, but B, I know how so many of us South African winemakers approach the industry. I know what the philosophy is, and it's one of not fierce competition, not we're battling next door neighbors, we're fighting with each other to try and get market share. Our winemakers seem to work together really well, but also get inspired by each other. And if somebody's done something really well, we want to try and match them, and we also want to do stuff really well. And this, I think, is going to be a great example where the success of one brand is going to encourage other people, not that you really need it, to keep on doing more, to explore more, to lift the standards of South African wine.
Yes, I think we all need to be proud pioneers of South Africa, and I think brands like Vilafonte and Distel, KWV, Kanonkorp, Beierskloof, all of them are really pushing the boundaries internationally. We've got exceptional winemakers in South Africa. We've got exceptional vineyards in South Africa, and winning awards like this and getting the recognition across the world just shows everyone what South Africa can produce. And I don't think they've seen what we actually can do. And with brands like Vilafonte, we can just take the next step and conquer the world, like we all try to do.
Well, I think you do a fair bit of conquering, because I've had more than enough of your wine to know the quality that comes out of your cellar. You've sent me some more wine, for which I am very grateful. Last time it was an Armada. This time it was a very carefully chosen couple of bottles, headlined by something new. I said we were celebrating KWV The Mentors as well as Vilafonte, and we celebrate with some malbec. Izele, talk me through the latest bottle you've thrown at us from your Mentors range.
Yes, so this is a very controversial wine. It's you're either going to love it or you're not going to like it at all. I don't want to say hate it, because it's personal preference. But just getting back to the limited edition at KWV and the Mentors ranges, we started out about 4 years ago. The marketing team came to me and said, listen, Izele, can't you do something different, because we need a new wine in the range? And I got so excited, and I said to them, what do you want me to put in the bottle? Because there's a big selection of wines in the winery. So we started out with the limited Carmenère, then we did a Petit Shiraz, and this year's limited edition is the Malbec. It's a Malbec from Paul, but it's interesting, the farm is like the border of Paul and Stellenbosch. So it's Malmesbury shale soils, only 6 tons per hectare. It's only a 0.98 hectare. But when you smell this wine and you taste this wine, it's something different. Don't expect Argentinian Malbec, not big, bold, massive tannins and dark fruits. Spearmint, eucalyptus, something totally different. If you get this in a blind tasting, you don't think you'll recognize it as a Malbec. But that's the whole idea behind this brand, and why we put limited wines in the bottle, to educate the people, pushing the boundaries. And just this wine for me is so unique. And when I tasted it in the 2019 vintage, I said, this is going to be the next limited edition. And I'm so glad I put it in the bottle. I was a bit scared, because I thought I'm going to get a few claps from all sides with this specific wine. But yeah, 100% from Paul. Only 1,300 bottles was made. 1,000 liters, and it's really, the bottles are numbered, comes in a special box with a whole story about the vineyard, about the winemaking techniques, and just we want to showcase what South Africa really can do.
We're going to drink the wine with you in just a moment. It's sitting beside me. You've alluded to the challenge of Malbec. If I think of South Africa, it's not a grape we have a huge amount of on its own. It appears in various blends, the Vilafonte Series M being a good example, but outside of maybe the Black Dog out at Paul Wallace or Bellevue do a fairly good Malbec. There's not a huge number that I've had, and not a huge number that have blown me away, whereas I've spent time in Mendoza, and there you just fall over excellent Malbec everywhere you look. So what is the challenge of this grape in South Africa, and what was it that said to you, right, this is a challenge that I want?
So I actually get Malbec from Solari's Pass as well, and that is so typical of Argentinian Mendoza Malbecs. It's dark plums, dark cherries, very structured. It's like a tannin bomb. And I usually use a portion of that in the Perrault and the Dr. Charles blend, and also in the Mentors Orchestra. But this is so unique. It's got eucalyptus trees around the block, and it's this It's totally, totally different. And I know when you taste these wines in a blind tasting, and this wine just keeps on jumping out. And I said to everyone, we need to do something with this wine because otherwise we're just going to blend it away. And it's a perfect component for the orchestra blend as well, because I want that New World fruit in the blend, but also that bit of mintiness, eucalyptus that takes you more to Bordeaux. But it's an interesting block, small block. The thing with malbec is that you can't do Bunsen berry sorting because the skin is so thin, and it just like when you tip it on the sorting belts, it's just juice. So you basically can get 300 liters per ton if you try to do sorting. I've got a whiteboard in the cellar where I just write big on it, never sort malbec. And this is especially one of those varietals that you don't sort. And in that specific block, you get a lot of birds, and so you need to get the picking date right. We pick it about 25 and a half, and it's drip. You get a lot of water, we break the leaves open, and a lot of people ask me, but is it vegetative green? No, it's not. It's optimum ripeness, but you get that spearmint, herbaceous, eucalyptus. So that's what I'm saying. If you like it, you're going to like it a lot. But I know there's a lot of people that's a bit against the greener side of Cabernets and Malbecs.
Not much middle ground, apparently, on this wine. We're going to drink it in a second. Let's go back to Mike. And there are two reasons I thought you guys would be great on the show together, aside from the fact that you're natural entertainers. You both have wine predominantly, or not predominantly, but a lot of wine that comes from the Paarl area. And you've also got brands that are now really, really well known. And if I were to have told you, Mike, 25 years ago or thereabouts, that by 2021, the Vilafonte brand would have risen to where it is, to the kind of brand that we're speaking of as we speak about brands like KWV as a global South African brand. Would you have believed me? Was I'm sure the ambition was there, but was the belief there that you could get Vilafonte to where it is today in such a short space of time?
Yeah, Dan, that's a really tough question to answer. I certainly think we had the ambition. We've maintained the focus. We've certainly spent the best part of 2 decades building a team around us that are able to help us realize that dream. I'm not sure that we would have ever believed the success that we have achieved, but also I think that we are getting warmed up, and there is more to come from the Vilafonte team. I don't think that we've peaked at this stage. So yeah, I guess it's more about savoring the moment than and then waking up on the other side of it at this stage.
The other link here is the range. It is KWV The Mentors, and it's the very top end, very select tier of wine, of which Izele is the custodian. And The Mentors speaks very much to your two partners in this particular business. We obviously know you from the long stint at Warwick, following on from your quite wonderful mum. But the time that you've spent with Phil and with Zelma, learning about the wine industry, guiding Vilafonte through its early years, through the formative stage up to today, what's that experience been like, having two titans of the Californian wine world to pick up the phone and be able to call anytime you need to?
Yeah, it has been a wonderful part of the journey. It has certainly been formative. I can't tell you how many recollections and memories I have of complex constructs in winemaking or wine growing being explained to me so that I could understand. Phil is a master at speaking at a level where he knows that somebody is going to be able to understand and take on board these very complicated things. I still remember walking in vineyards, must be close to 25 years ago, with Phil when he was talking to me about a Cabernet Franc vineyard, using an analogy that the vine is a human. And, that always stuck with me. So yes, it has been wonderful. I still remember very clearly the very first day when Zelma called me over to put my nose into a barrel of malbec and said, now that's what we're talking about. And, malbec has been a remarkable part of the Vilafonte journey. So yes, it's been absolutely wonderful. And I'm very proud to be able to say this when Phil and Zelma are listening, because, it has been a partnership, but I do feel that I've probably learned the most out of the three of us over the last 25 years.
Well, let's flip that over a touch, Zelma. Compare the brash, young, Adelaide-educated wine marketing guru who persuaded you it was a good idea to start a business with him many, many years ago, to the rather suave and bespectacled wine icon of Stellenbosch we see today. What's your journey, Zelma, been like with young Michael Ratcliffe?
Well, like fine wine, Mike has matured beautifully.
I think that's a great way of summing it up. It probably leaves out a lot of misadventure along the way. But it's clearly been quite a journey. And in a way, it's been a journey without its hiccups. And we always, at times like this, is a big award. We celebrate all the good stuff. But what from this journey, what are the challenges been, Zelma? What are the difficult parts of this been? And what lessons do you think South African wine can learn from your journey and perhaps still needs to learn to help our industry to keep growing and to keep succeeding?
I've always believed and I've observed that one of the characteristics that I see in successful wine businesses is persistence, because the winemaking world is not easy. There is a lot of competition, and every year is different thanks to Mother Nature. I think farming in general is a really tough business, and I have a lot of admiration for farmers of all kinds. But I think that, again, taking that vision and just pursuing it systematically, it needs to be a clear vision. And that united the three of us in pursuing it every day, every month, every year, without, I always felt we could make a wine, given the soil and the climate and the wines we tasted when we first came. I believed we could make a world-class wine. And I had been involved in making world-class wines in California. But quite frankly, the grapes are different in South Africa because it's different climate, different soils. And so that makes it much more fun, more interesting, more challenging. So getting to know the soils, the grapes that come off, working with the technical people, both in the vineyard and the winery. And we had our lumps in 2008, when we'd been selling a pallet, 2 pallets of wine, and all of a sudden the same buyer was buying a case or 2 cases. I mean, we had one vintage where we couldn't make Series M just because the quality of the grapes wasn't there. And so it's just part of the wine business. But we didn't ever compromise the quality of our wines. So a lot of times they were always smaller than the vineyard produced. And because we have this very nice wine left over from young grapes or from blocks that were not performing that well that year, we ultimately in 2012 started our seriously old dirt blend to take up these good wines, but not good enough for Series C or Series M. So it's being willing to take the risks and take the potential downside of your decisions to maintain the quality and character of your wines. That's always one of the challenges. And every winery works out with a different goal. But staying true to that goal, with the vagaries of market and weather, is just not the easiest thing to do. But boy, when you do and are able to do it consistently, it's powerful.
You've maintained that integrity and that consistency as a brand right the way through the story. You mentioned the Seriously Old Dirt there. That's another success story in itself. Phil, am I right that you coined that particular name?
Yes. Actually, Mother Nature did the work, and I just translated it. Oftentimes people would say, well, what's one of the successes of the Vilafonte vineyard? And I said, well, part of it is the fact that we're working with seriously old dirt. And there's a value in that, because basically what I was looking for in the vineyard is I have spent a lot of my career working with wine producers who have decided that they wanted to plant vineyards in areas that were probably a little bit more productive than the vine spacing, trellising, and so forth was really capable of handling. And so when we selected the site and designed the vineyard for Vilafonte, my objective was to build a vineyard that was not overly vegetative. For example, we don't own a hedging machine. And if we do any leafing, it's a little bit by hand. And so we develop a sufficient amount of canopy, but not too much. And I think is a great axiom of life. Do just enough, but not too much. Do the right thing at the right time in the right sequence or seriousness. And so the seriously old dirt really factored into that very much as a key, and that allowed us to not make real big vines, just big enough to do the job that we needed to do.
That job continues to be done splendidly and leads into our Series C, which we're going to try in just a moment. But let's head back to Izele and her lab, buried in a secret underground cavern somewhere at KWV headquarters. Izele, this whole project, the Mentors project, I talk about it in jest about being all of this mad science, but it is far more than that. What is the process like in terms of deciding in any given year what grapes make the cut, what grapes don't? Is it a case of, well, what's in fashion? Is it a case of something found that's new and cool and you think it's going to work? How do you put all of this together?
So yeah, Dan, we started this Mentors cellar in 2006, just as an experimental cellar, just to play around with different niche varietals, different winemaking techniques. It is actually the small little lab at KWV. And it is just like, we want to try to push the boundaries, understand different vineyards. Talking about serious old dirt, it's like really understanding the soils. But we've got an exceptional viticultural team led by Marco Ventrella, and it's that understand the vineyards in South Africa, that understand the soils. We go out and we go select the best vineyard blocks, and then we bring it into the winery, and I will trial with it for 3 years, bring it into the winery, divide the morning sun site into 3 different tanks, do a whole bunch of whole berries, use different barrels, play around with a lot of coopers, different winemaking techniques, and then we just trial. It's all trial and error, and we're just actually making mistakes. So if we don't make mistakes, we're not doing what we're supposed to do. But then after 3 years, we look at all the blocks and we decide which wines will go into the Mentors, what will go to Cathedral, what will go to Rudeberg, to classic wines, to La Brie, and actually try and improve the whole brand of KWV, not just the Mentors wines, but looking at different styles in the world, and try to get these wines to not just showcase what South Africa can produce, but also try and compete like Vilafonte has done now, so really good, compete with the rest of the world. So it's experimentation, innovation, pushing the boundaries. Marco will phone me and say, listen here, I've got a new block of Tanat and it's in the Swartland and the soil is this type and it's old bush vines. Can't we do this? Can you trial it in the vineyard? Or we got a new planting of Cabernet in Stellenbosch on this slope. I think it's got a lot of potential into the winery. So it's really exciting, and really try to push the boundaries and understand the different varietals, different sites, different terroirs, and everything that works in the mental cellar we take to the bigger cellars. And then we try to build a bigger brand, but not just for KWV, but for Wine South Africa.
The sheer volume of certificates behind you is illustrative of just how often you get it right. Although on close inspection, I think, Izele, I do see your standard 7 geography certificate on the wall behind you as well, amongst all of the wine ones. You get to try all this stuff, and it's exciting and it's different. What about challenging you as a winemaker and finding spaces? If somebody phones you up and you've got you have to Google just to find out what it is, and then you're trying to make wine from something you've never worked with before or have very fleeting experience of. How frightening, exciting is that process, and what sort of help is there when you're doing this for the first time?
Yes, so I've made so many wines with the help of Google. I think sometimes when we were at university, we missed some of the varietals. I had to go back to my university books and just see all the different varietals and understanding what it is. But my life motto is expect the unexpected, and grab every challenge with both hands and run with it. As you know, I was a tennis player, and it's always a challenge, pushing yourself to be better, make better wines. And my dad used to say that you will never make the best wine in the world. You will be the champion one day, and the next morning you'll wake up and then 50 people would have made a better wine than yours yesterday. So it's really about pushing the boundaries, understanding stylistically. For me, the most important thing is understanding the style that you want to produce. I don't want to create a Bordeaux style. I don't want to create a Rhone. I want to create a mental style. And I want to put our stamp on a specific style. And that is just by understanding the vineyards, working closely with the producers, and also with the viticultural team. My phone call usually is to Marco and saying, listen, Marco, so I received these grapes. And this is the sugar level, this is the pH, this is this. I'm going to try this in the winery, and let's see what we get out of it. What is stylistically what you expect to get out of this specific block? But we've got an exceptional team at KWV, working closely together and understanding the styles and really running with the wines and saying we want to be proud pioneers of the South African wine industry.
I love the fact that you've spoken about South African identity on the show on Mondays. Some of you might have seen we had Louis Latour and we had Storm talking about Burgundy and about Hemel and how Hemel is very much on its own terms now. And we've got 2 icons of Californian wine with us here today, or American wine in general, and a mine of information and of wisdom and of experience, but not telling us to make American wine in South Africa, because we have our own soil, our own terroir, our own ideas. Do you think that we're now in a position in South Africa across the board where we are not trying to mirror a Bordeaux or a Burgundy or a California, where we're on our own terms and we're comfortable with that, and realizing that our identity is one not just to embrace, but to be successful with?
I definitely, Dan. I think you get to a stage where you start understanding 5% of your vineyards, understanding 5% of the terroir, understanding 5% of winemaking. I said to someone yesterday that it's getting easier. After 10 years, you're tweaking the 0.1% of your winemaking style. And it's really that we need to learn, we need to understand what the other countries are doing, and we just need to listen. Still with your eyes and with your ears, and just taste more wines. And we need to taste every single day, and we need to taste international wines, and we need to taste our own wines so that we can be pioneers for South Africa when we travel the world, when we go overseas and we taste even more wines, and then we can stand there and say, listen here, but have you tasted a South Africa Cabernet-based wine or a South African Shiraz-based wine? not saying it's Bordeaux style, but saying Cabernet-based South African wine. And I think we're getting there. We are building quite a big brand internationally, all over the world. And with awards like Vilafonte's won now, it's just putting South Africa back on the map, and everyone needs to stand on top of the mountain and scream out, South Africa's back.
I'll expect the Dan Really Likes Wine show to be part of that chorus. I've just tasted finally the Malbec, and you're right. I don't think I would have picked it as a Malbec at all. And there is that bit of a green streak, but there's a loveliness to it that's only going to develop more as it gets a little bit older. Although this particular bottle doesn't have much chance of getting older, given I've opened it on the show, and I rather like it. Back to California, where it's very early in the morning, although Phil and Zelma normally have their first glass of Chardonnay at 6:10 before they start aerobic and get their day underway. Phil, linking into that conversation there about the sense of identity, to what extent do you think South Africa has fulfilled its winemaking potential, and how much further can we go?
Well, yeah, if I knew that answer, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. You know, it's a great question, Dan. You know, I think if I would really just, you know, presented it as you presented that question, I started to think through the attributes. And, you know, I'll tell you, one of the things that I think for South Africa, I would say people need to have the image that they can do it. And I see sometimes that people maybe are a little bit, maybe they've got multiple things in mind. And we with the Vilafonte project we took, in a sense, kind of a luxury position, in the sense that Zelma and I, we knew the style of wine that we wanted to produce. We knew the attributes, the characteristics we wanted to produce, and we knew the challenges of getting there. And so we just set about working on each of the challenges. And I think one of the things is that I will say that I think for South Africa, I'm going to talk about South Africa as a challenge, is that we're well aware of the fact that we have a lot of labor, but I think there's also the expectation that labor is not a skilled or highly skilled or capable of doing the kind of precision that we look at as an example with Vilafonte. I'm going back to Zel's comments about Malbec. We appreciate the fact that you can't berry sort Malbec in the winery. So if we want to get the objectives that we're looking for, we berry sort in the vineyard, and that is at veraison. So we go through, and I oftentimes say that every berry that goes into a bottle of wine from Vilafonte has fingerprints all over it, because our team goes through this very precise team of basically highly trained people, and they pick out any berries out of the cluster that are not absolutely correct for the stage that they're at, and they throw them on the ground. So we do our berry sorting on Malbec in the vineyard. Now, people would tell you that that's not possible because we can't train the labor to do it. There are a lot of people in the table grape business who do that all the time, and they think it's perfectly normal. Yet from the wine side, we think, well, it's too expensive. We can't get the team. We can't train the labor, and so forth. So I think to your question, one of the things that I'd say is grab a hold of the resources that we have and elevate them to the level of the objectives, the absolute objectives that you set and you formulate in your brain and in your team, and then you train the team to achieve it. And that's one of the things I think that's a core success about Vilafonte is we're like surgical instruments, you know. We figure out what has to be happening and we make it happen, and sort of the heck with let Mike figure out how to make it work from a sales standpoint so that we can afford to do it. So it's yeah, there's absolutely no reason. I mean, we see there's no reason, no barrier that we can't overcome in South Africa to put ourselves in the company of the wines of the world.
And I
That's one.
had a broader view. I started making wine in Napa Valley in 1970. There were only about 9 wineries. And I saw the California wine industry grow its quality wines. The 70s were a time of winemaking experimentation. The 80s were a discovery of the power in the vineyards. The 90s were the time that the winemaking and the wine growing became integrated. And in those early years, we did look to, let's try to make wine like Bordeaux or Burgundy. And it took California decades to get to the point that we don't have to look at other countries to try to make the same wines they make. And because we've become knowledgeable enough to appreciate that each place has its own climate and soils and consumers. But it has taken, Napa Valley 50 years to be what it is. And that's 50 years of a lot of hard work and sweat and toil and not necessarily knowing where we're going. But I really appreciate the idea that South Africa makes South African wines because, South Africa has so much potential and it's realizing it, but it takes time for these to happen. And it's really wise to be who you are.
I think it's both a wonderful philosophy and some sage advice from 2 people who've been around the wine block once or twice and are well positioned to give it to us. So we don't need to copy the rest of the world, but gee, we can learn from them. And that's exactly what we've done tonight from Phil and from Zelma. Just before we leave you, let's head back to Mike and get 2 very quick answers to 2 very short questions. Give me the summary of the new Series C, which I've had a sip of, and I can already see why it's flying off the Vilafonte shelves. And then where to for Vilafonte? I know you've spoken about possibly a home for the brand coming up. You're now top of the world. What's the view like, and where do you go from here?
Well, the Series C it's a wonderful wine. I have to say that the entire team has been excited about releasing it to the market. It's one of those wines that just makes us happy. And from the initial feedback we're getting from our customers, it's going to be making them happy. It's Cabernet driven. The wonderful thing about this wine, and in fact any wine, Dan, when you ask a question, tell me about it. It's almost like I could tell you a similar story last year and the year before, because our focus has been exactly the same for the last decades. The wine has got structure, intensity, concentration. I think the 2019 is something that you're going to want to have in your cellar in 10 years and maybe 20 years from now. But it's a bit of a beaut. I think a more interesting question to answer is about where to from here. We're probably not going to do anything new. There's no new wines planned. Vilafonte has always been like a swan swimming along on a lake, very calm and serene on the top, but underneath our team are working very, very hard. We're innovating. We're bringing in new technologies. We're applying academic rigor and intellect to our wines and really working very hard to try to get them to the very next level. So don't expect any new wines. There is a lot of talk internally about having a home because we are closed to the public. It is something we're discussing, but there's nothing concrete in the pipeline at this stage. I think it's more of the same, producing wonderful wines to the best of our ability and expressing the terroir. And the reason that we're able to do that is because we have such a strong supporting structure, such a strong team at Vilafonte that the team have really grown up alongside us to become part of the Vilafonte family. And for that, we're very proud. There will be some new things coming. Watch the space, but don't expect massive press releases anytime soon.
Other than to say we are still celebrating, and rightly so. Grant Sauls watching on YouTube. Vilafonte is absolutely fantastic. world class. Scott Willem-Joubert, himself an acclaimed winemaker, well deserved for both producers. It is clear that no shortcuts are taken. Johan van Eck responding there for sure. The Thai-Bosch Crescendo right up there as well. Another great South African wine. Monique Potgieter van Wyk, well done. Izele van Blerk and Johan van Eck. Team mentors from KWV again at the Veritas. Well done, Izele van Blerk and Marco Ventrella. So some more congratulations to wrap up. Well, it's been a lovely show with 4 wonderful people who've all had a real impact on South African wine and have a lot to celebrate for different reasons at the moment. We will be seeing more of Mike, I'm sure, fairly soon because there's a lot happening in Stellenbosch, and he's also the chairman of Stellenbosch Tourism, Stellenbosch Wine Routes, in between his work with Vilafonte, and hopefully it won't be too long before we have Phil and Zelma back, and we can't keep Izele away, and we like it that way. So we'll have all of you back again soon, but for now, to our quartet of guests, to Phil and Zelma waking up so early over in California. Mike only woke up an hour ago as well, and to Izele, guys, thank you all so much for being part of the show. Real honor to have you all with us.
Thank you for having us.
So there we go. Vilafonte and KWV The Mentors. Try that malbec if you can get hold of it. Only 1,300 bottles. Maybe it's one you don't like, but if it's a style you do, then you're not going to put it down. And you're certainly not going to want to share it. 8 o'clock tonight, 2 things to look out for. This week's episode of the Dan Nicholl Show features Marcel Hopkins from Boerse It also features a young cricketer in Luca Sipamla, and Dave Wessels, the former coach of the Melbourne Rebels and the Western Force, plus Grant Lottering on his cycling tour, and some life-saving. That's on Supersport 211 tonight on DSTV. Also coming out at 8 o'clock, but digitally, so you can watch it a little later once you're done with the Dan Nicholl Show. That brand new series with Boschendal, the Red Blazer series, where myself and Maps Mapanyane catch up with entrepreneurs across South Africa. And this episode tonight, we talk to Jason Goliath about the business of comedy. I'm off to Zoo David Higgs's brand new restaurant that opens in about an hour. So I'm off to the opening of that. I'll keep you posted on social media, and I'll see you back again for more celebrations of South African wine soon. Thanks to all our guests. Thanks to everybody for watching. Keep drinking, keep supporting wine. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye. To join the Pick and Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.